Hey, what's up, guys? My name's Josh Kent. I'm going to be going over Peruvian history up to the 20th century. So, I'm doing everything I can to keep this short and sweet and to the point because I know you don't want to hear me talk for 15 minutes about this stuff. So, here we go. All right, Peruvian culture. So, Peru is home to the oldest um, group of people in Latin America. Um, it was the Norte Chico civilization. All right. The Norte Chico civilization, also known as the Corral, was found in the lowland part of Peru. They didn't live up in the Andes, they lived in the coastal region of Peru, the western side of the modern country of Peru. They had over 30 major town and population hubs. There were more, but 30 significant ones. And they were found mostly on three rivers, the Fortaleza, Patavilca, and the Supe River. There were more, like I said, but these three rivers had the most reoccurring archaeological sites for the Norte Chico civilization. So they're considered a pre-ceramic culture. That means they did not have ceramics at all, but they did have some huge architectural feats. These included sunken plazas, kind of like really big kivas that you see in the American Southwest, and large earthen mounds. Potential use of textiles, I couldn't find a lot of info on that, so that's why I just said potential. They're a polytheistic religion, which was found in several Andes cultures, and then not a whole lot is known about the Norte Chico government, but it's assumed it had to be pretty complex to be able to manage all of Norte Chico. All right, next we're going to talk about the Incan Empire. So, the Incan Empire was the largest empire in pre-Columbian America. It originated as a small tribe in Cusco, and Cusco eventually became like the headquarters, sort of the capital of the Incan Empire, if you will. So the Incan Empire ran all basically along the majority of the western edge of South America, that being all the way from Ecuador down to Argentina, and at one point even uh, bordered what a lot of people would consider the rainforest in Brazil. So the first Incan, I guess, first real famous Incan ruler was this guy, Pachacutec, and he was the first Incan emperor that decided, hey, we need to expand the Incan Empire. And so he went to work doing that. Pretty cool. So, Incan culture, like I said earlier, Cusco was the headquarters or capital of the empire, all things military, politics, business, economics. So the language spoken in the Incan Empire was Quechua. Um, it was not like natively spoken by all of the Indian tribes in the Incan Empire, but it was a language imposed upon them, so they were forced to speak it. But people were allowed religious freedom; they were allowed to practice their own religion. The only exception being that the Incan Empire forced also Incan religious practices on those people. So they had the Incan religious practices were their priority. Another really cool feat of the Incan Empire was the Inca Trail, which a lot of people compare to like the Roman cobblestone roads in Europe. So next we're going to sort of get into like the Spanish conquer of the Incan Empire. So the first Spaniard to set foot in Peru in the Incan Empire was actually Francisco Pizarro. He was drawn to that part of the continent by rumors of gold and riches and stuff. So, fortunately for Pizarro, I mean, if you want to call it that, he showed up in the middle of basically an Incan civil war. And so, what had happened in the 1520s, roughly 1524 to 1526, smallpox had spread from Panama down the western coast of South America and had started decimating the Incan population. And so the leader at the time of the Incan Empire, his name was, and I have it written down, I'm going to read it just because I'm going to say it all wrong, Huayna Capac, um, died he was the leader of the Incan Empire, and all of his family basically died. And so his two sons, Atahualpa and Huascar, basically started a civil war fighting each other. And Francisco Pizarro took advantage of the infighting and actually ended up killing uh, Huascar and taking control. And then Atahualpa was captured and tried for murder of his brother, which he didn't do. The Spanish did. And then he was sentenced to death, and he was strangled to death, which is pretty crazy. All right. So again, European conquer continued. So for a while, Pizarro remained in control of the Incan Empire, and in 1534, Pizarro made Cusco like the Spanish settlement in Peru. Obviously, there's some issues with Spanish colonial rule there. Obviously, a lot of the Incas didn't want to be under Spanish control, and there were even issues between the Spanish troops that were there, Spanish infighting. And then the town of Lima was formed in 1535, and Lima is where the encomienda system was started in Peru, and that's where basically certain Spanish leaders were allowed, basically like given land, and their job was to farm the land for wealth, like farm the land to make stuff to create wealth for the Spanish Empire, but also force the natives into Christianity, and because they were Spanish, we know it's the Catholic Church, to help the Catholic Church also gain power. So Pizarro ended up being assassinated in 1541. So now we're going to talk about the Viceroyalty of Peru, which is sort of the next power, next source of power in Peru, I guess. So the Viceroyalty of Peru was established in 1542 to consolidate power over Peru and most of Spanish-controlled South America. The first viceroy was this guy, Blasco Vela, but he was assassinated by Francisco Pizarro's brother. And then this guy, Francisco de Toledo, eventually became viceroy in the 1570s. So Peru ended up becoming Spain's source of power in South America, largely due to mineral mining. And the biggest cash cow in Peru was silver. So the way the Spanish mined silver in Peru, obviously you need people to dig mines. They forced Incan communities into hard labor. So Lima, the Spanish colony town settlement in Peru that they had established in 1535, actually became Spain's most powerful city in South America, because all of the things they mined went through Lima before it left for Spain. So further away from Lima and Cusco, the Spanish had a hard time asserting control over the native people, and so they basically put these local elite people in charge, which we've sort of talked about in our textbook briefly. So these people were considered the local elites, and they were very proud of their Incan history, which, as we know sort of from our textbook, is nativism and the nativism movement. So we already know a little bit about that. So Napoleon captured King Ferdinand in 1808, which inspired two separate Creole rebellions. But in spite of these Creole rebellions, the local remained very loyal to Spain. So Jose de San Martin declared independence for Peru in 1820, but Peru wasn't officially free until 1824, when Spanish troops were defeated at the Battle of Ayacucho. Peru still struggled with mestizo people who supported the monarchy in spite of their Peruvian independence, and Spain actually didn't officially recognize Peru's legitimate country until 1879. So between the 1520s and the 1620s, the population of Peru dropped from 9 million to just over half a million. The specific number for just over half a million is roughly 600,000, and that was due almost exclusively to lack of immunity to infectious disease. So basically, widespread unintentional genocide on the hand of the Spanish. And then after the War of Independence in the early 1820s, Peru actually struggled with territorial conflicts, and these really involved Peru and Bolivia specifically. Peru and Bolivia were trying to unite. Some people didn't want that, caused fighting between Peru and Bolivia, and eventually Peru was even involved in the War of the Pacific, and so Chile had declared war on Bolivia, and Peru basically sent a party of politicians to Chile to try and mediate the conflict to keep war from happening. Ultimately, their attempt failed, and war between Bolivia and Chile erupted, and Peru was a Bolivian ally, so Peru got involved in the war. So, next slide. This is my Works Cited page. I'll try to keep this brief, guys. I know a lot of people don't want to spend 15 minutes watching videos of other people talk. I'm not that interesting to hear. So I did everything I could to make this as brief and to the point as possible. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.